I guess this is going to be a bit of a rant about. I have no idea what it's actually about, but I just had an experience where a couple people that I guess are my friends or were my friends sort of crossed a series of lines trying to prove that they're my friends. Like, this, I guess, kind of needs a certain amount of context. But essentially, the people that I've been friends with, I've been friends with since like the age of 8 years old, from like pre-primary school all the way through to graduating university and even to today, where I'm a 28-year-old adult pushing adulthood. And over the past 3 months, I've really only begun to understand who I kind of am. And it's been like a journey that I started going on like over 5 years ago. This sort of like sense of curiosity about self and about the world. And as time's gone on, that's sort of what started out as a sort of extrinsic curiosity about, history, ancient ideas, space, aliens, religion, all these concepts that are projected into our world, turned into an internal one where I don't really care for an answer in all those extrinsic places anymore. The idea of whether or not there's a God, whether or not there are aliens, what happened in history, what the truths are, and all of these unknowns. There's been a sort of acceptance of an appreciation, I think, that they are unknowns. And I want them to stay that way. And as I've gone on this journey and it's become more and more internalized, something that's come to my realization in the past 3 months, not that long, but has had probably the largest impact on my life, is this relationship with these friends who, by all accounts, aren't bad people. They aren't trying to be manipulative or hurtful. In fact, they believe that they're being good friends. But there's something that's being overlooked, and that's who they're being a good friend for, if that makes sense. Whether it's for me or whether it's for their own sense of self-aggrandizing, I guess, or self-awareness, in the sense that what I need is being overlooked for what they think I need. And it's such a nuanced and like fine line, because you always hear about people talking about like toxic relationships, right? Where people are like fundamentally just bad people, like they do or say things that like directly hurt you because they're hurt, and that type of thing. Hurt people. But they don't often talk about circumstances where people are, from their point of view, trying to be good, trying to be, good. But their perception of good is simply different to yours, and it's so nuanced and it's so fine. It's such a subtle differentiator, because lately I've felt this almost cosmic need to be alone. And when you're part of, quote unquote, a group or a circle, and again, this circle is people who you respect, who you care about and have for a very, very long time. Like, these neural networks are solid in my brain in terms of what my perception of relationships are. It becomes really hard to identify the shortcomings of these circumstances or these relationships. And lately they've become a lot clearer. And yeah, I guess that's kind of the motivation for this video, because today, or rather 3 months ago, I kind of went excommunicado with a lot of my friends, trying to figure out what exactly it is that I need to be doing, with my time and my life, because I realized essentially that I've, since a young age, had this mentality of going at it with the group. We're all creatives, and to me it was always about like teamwork makes the dream work, right? And within that, I've been the one fully committed to the idea of teamwork. It's been my primary sort of state of being. And with them, it's been a secondary action. But, secondary is still very important, right? But they've had their own independent aspects of their creative lives that didn't really involve me. And I don't really know how I didn't see this for such a long, long time, but recently, or like I said 3 months ago, it came into full effect in my mind of just how reliant, I guess, I've been on other people who aren't reliant on me in the same way. We didn't see each other similarly. And again, it's not out of this intentional villainizing sort of toxic behavior, but it's a subconscious perception that's been ingrained since a very long time ago. And as I've gone excommunicado, I've been in a much better place. I've been focusing on myself. I've been realizing what I want my life to look like. I've been realizing the sort of minimal desires or needs that I have for my life. And I've found a flow of creativity that I don't think I've ever had before. But within all this, there's been this sort of constant knocking at the door, which today became literal. But before it was these texts, which was fine. And I, at some point, was like, I should explain myself, that I am gonna need some space, and I'm going through this kind of patch where it's hard to explain over a text, but essentially I'm just going to need some space, but I'm doing good. Don't worry about me. This is what I said 3 months ago. And about a month and a half goes by. My space is kind of being respected, but I didn't realize that in that time when I said I'm going to need like 2 months, when I actually sent that text, you can't put a time on self-discovery. And so it's been about a month and a half that went by, and eventually, texts come in again. Like, what's up, man? You ready to link up and all that sort of stuff? And I really wasn't. But I don't know what to say because I've already explained myself. And this is also a very pertinent point, is that you can't explain yourself to people, is something I've also learned over the past year or so, to be honest with you, a bit longer than that. But I'm realizing just how deep that degree is, because these are people who I used to like explain everything to, tell everything to, my deepest thoughts. And what I'm realizing is that I was, for the longest time, only being heard and not listened to. And so a month and a half goes by and they're like, ready to link up? And I'm like, nah. And, another week or two goes by and they're like, you ready to link up? And I'm like, okay, I can't keep answering this question. It's actually like pulling me out of my peace. And so I kind of stopped replying. And then another like 2-3 weeks goes by and some guilt trippy messages start coming in. Like, I'm hurt that you're doing this. Why are you doing this? What is this? And this is partially what also clarified for me the sort of selfishness that came in with the expectations of me. Because to me, it just didn't make sense that you're hurt by my lack of commitment now to the team when it was always secondary to you. And this is something that's blown my mind, is that like this expectation, which I am also at fault for establishing as someone who committed to the team, but that's also a result of my own past traumas and stuff. So I got to give myself also like the sort of, forgiveness that I deserve for that. It's not my fault, but this expectation that they have has become subconscious to a point where I am somewhat villainized if I do not live up to it. It's like I'm expected to sacrifice myself wholly, 100%. And despite the fact that they've only ever committed 50% of themselves, that was the deal for the longest time. And it sounds toxic, but again, I contributed to this. It wasn't me being bullied into something. It was just the way it was. And it was unfair. And now, as I remained excommunicado, and they said that they were hurt and all this sort of stuff, expecting explanations for my behavior, right? Which you can't do. Because if you're explaining yourself, you're justifying for the sake of being accepted. And that defeats the whole purpose of self-discovery. I didn't respond to those messages either. And then phone calls came in. Incessantly. Trying to get me to explain or trying to take care of me in a way. I've had depressive states. And so the desire for me to behave as I once did is now projected outwardly as a form of protecting me from myself. I'm not fully understanding of it, but there's an element of them being the hero of my life because I can't take care of myself. I need them since I was wholly committed, right? And I didn't respond to those calls either. I still wasn't ready to explain myself. Still processing all the instances of memories and experiences that I'd had over the years of my life that were evidence of this imbalance in the relationship. And if I were to engage in a conversation, first of all, I know that I wouldn't get the emotional response that I need. But secondly, I know that I would be responding in an emotional manner that is rather aggressive. And maybe that's a good thing, but I would rather actually not engage at all and just preserve my peace. And that's what I've been doing. And now, 2026 rolls along. New year. New me. But they want the old one back. And it's been 3 days into 2026. And today, I had, for about 30 minutes straight, them buzzing at my gate. Unannounced, unrequested, for me to open up. And I can still remember the anxiety that I felt. And it made me realize I hadn't felt anxiety like this in months. And that they were a huge source of my anxiety, which baffled me. Because I did not want to open the gate. I was getting phone calls from them. They were at my gate, buzzing at the same time. And it was rather overwhelming. And I'd felt my peace and my private space being invaded. And I did not like it. And in that moment, I realized the degree to which the separation is painful, but more so for others than it is for me, which is, I guess it's not too surprising considering, again, I've been feeling at peace throughout this process. And they've been rather uncertain or unclear as to what has happened. And yeah, I don't know. That's kind of what led me to this sort of rant right here, this sort of perception of life is messy, because there is no explaining how I feel in a manner that justifies how I feel, whilst also maintaining their emotions. It would largely be aggressive and angry because of the instances that I have as a list of examples of when I was quote-unquote wronged. But that doesn't help the conversation or someone perceive what you're feeling when you attack them. I know this because it's been done to me, and it doesn't help, but I am capable of holding my tongue as a result of my past and my upbringing, and theirs is different. It's weird because I don't even know if we're going to be friends anymore. But the weirdest thing is that, that's not a problem to me. It's definitely more of a problem for them. But yeah, that's just, I guess, how the cookie crumbles. I don't know. That's why I say life is messy. It's something that I want to provide guarantees, but it doesn't. Because I know that throughout this whole process, whether or not they'd have grown personally or individually from it, doesn't influence the outcome, whether or not. Well, it does, but it doesn't, it's not in my control, rather. You can't force people to self-reflect. I can't force them to realize the imbalance of these relationships, and if I try to explain it, they will justify their own point of views. This is how conversations tend to go, or conflicts tend to go, and it's been something that I've been observing since I was 9 years old. So I already know how these things play out. I've been through them recently as well, my own family. And even in those instances, it's the same, and they're more willing to hear me out, and it's just not enough. And so that's why I say there's no point explaining yourself. Protecting my peace, your peace, is all that you can really do. And that's important. Yeah, I don't know if there's a conclusion to this. As much as there is just a story that I felt the need to record and get out after this experience that happened 2 hours ago. So, yeah. I guess the moral of the story is protect your peace. Because I know now I don't feel anxious. One more thing. The craziest thing, though, is when I was getting these texts and I couldn't respond because I was actually away on vacation with my mom, and we didn't have network there, which is such a weird universal irony, because they were like, why aren't you replying? And I literally couldn't. There was this sort of realization that I had where it's going to get worse. I predicted that this was going to happen about 3 weeks ago. Now, I thought it was going to happen within another 2 months. I didn't expect it to be like New Year, third day of 2026. Bam. Prophecies coming true. But I don't know. I just wanted to add that I could see this kind of situation occurring before it happened. And I remember the anxiety that I felt when I thought about it happening. But when it happened, oh my God. The anxiety was like, you generally want to avoid putting yourself in circumstances where you feel extreme levels of discomfort. So, but this was definitely the best way for me to avoid that, because the anxiety I felt letting them in, or at the thought of letting them in, was significantly worse than just ignoring them until they stopped. It's so wild. And I feel like I was right, because what would bother me so much more and what would make me angry is trying to quote unquote explain myself, right, when they're emotional and upset and frustrated at my behavior and I'm quote unquote in the wrong. That would piss me off. And I'm getting pissed off thinking about it now. Having to justify myself to people who want me to explain my behavior as if it is incorrect. Infantilizing me. Yeah. I don't know. But I just wanted to add that I could kind of see this coming. And maybe that comes with the trust in yourself and the ability to sort of like understand others' patterns and behaviors as you observe your own. And also, yeah, because there's a certain level of empathy as to why I don't want to explain myself, because I know that I will get angry, and attacking people during these conversations with a list of what you think they've done wrong, which again I know has happened to me and it doesn't feel good, is not beneficial. So yeah, moral of the story, protect your peace. Stay sane. And yeah. Think of yourself first.